Kelowna, one of the most beautiful places in the world to live, surrounded by provincial parks, pine forests, vineyards, orchards, and mountains. Wouldn't it be great if there was a podcast about our love of Kelowna? Oh no, it's real. This is I Love Kelowna, an interview-style podcast about the fabulous and fascinating people that make up our great city and the Okanagan. Intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, creatives, and anyone who has an interesting story to tell about how they're contributing to our wonderful home. This is I Love Kelowna, and here's your host, Luke J. Minkus.
We are back for episode 242 of the I Love Kelowna podcast. Today I'm sitting here with Ash Simpson, and we're going to talk about leadership and the connection between the psychology of sports, real estate, and parenting. Both of us find these topics very interesting, and I'm really excited to talk to Ash Simpson today.
Kelowna, one of the most beautiful places in the world to live, surrounded by provincial parks, pine forests, vineyards, orchards, and mountains. Wouldn't it be great if there was a podcast about our love of Kelowna? Oh no, it's real. This is I Love Kelowna, an interview-style podcast about the fabulous and fascinating people that make up our great city and the Okanagan. Intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, creatives, and anyone who has an interesting story to tell about how they're contributing to our wonderful home. This is I Love Kelowna, and here's your host, Luke J. Minkus.
So Ash, thank you for coming by today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate that.
You told me when we met last week about when you came to Kelowna and the interesting story about how you've been with your wife forever, and then you just recently got married. So could you tell me a little bit about that? Or you...
So we did.
You got to correct me on that one.
Yeah, I'm going to correct you. It's fine. It's fine. It's actually a little known fact. So we actually haven't been married, but it's kind of an interesting thing. So when we first met in Vernon, and she was 17 years old. I was 19 years old, and we just it was incredible. Within 6 months, we were living together. And then we just started building a life together, and it was really interesting. Made a lot of the mistakes that I think, young people do, and we racked up a lot of student loan debt, and we racked up a lot of debt. And we ended up in a situation that I think I'm fair to share. Like, it's fine to share. I think we were almost $180,000 down.
Wow.
It was, yeah. So imagine holding that on
and
through all
young,
your 20s.
You were. In your 20s.
Yeah. So I think we had managed to do that by the time we were 21.
Wow.
It was like almost a race to make life hard. And so we made a lot of bad decisions, but we just, stuck with each other, and it was just an incredible journey. And so I can say that year 7 we got engaged, and phenomenal place. And then we went up a gondola. Another little known thing is I'm extremely scared of heights. Mm-hmm. So going up a gondola, and I've got a ring in my pocket, and I'm just freaking out. Like, there's no saving me at this point.
Right.
I don't know what I'm more scared of, what I'm about to say and what I'm about to do, or this gondola ride, and like having a glass bottom at the time. Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah.
It was a lot. So fine. We can fast forward, and a lot of life and a lot of learning, and a child, and a house together, and paying off all the debt, and kind of going through all that process. It was an interesting journey. I definitely wouldn't say we took the easiest road we possibly could have. We stuck by each other and stuck with each other, and very little fights, and just kind of like almost like in a survival aspect. So it probably felt not unlike what it feels like to a lot of people today, during that time. And so it's, we just got to experience it a little bit earlier in life. So from that, so we've been together, I think 18, almost 19 years.
Incredible.
It's amazing that she's put up with me this long and all of my antics. So it's very appreciative. So,
right. I have 3 teenage daughters, and when one of them says they're dating someone, I get nervous because, you see a lot of people break up and they don't make it. And one of the causes seems to be like they've changed so much over time. They didn't really know who they were or their partner was when they started dating. And that's why people break up, and you guys made it. And that's pretty extraordinary. Like, we don't hear too many stories of that. People getting together very young and lasting that long.
Yeah. So I have a theory, and this kind of only relates to just me, maybe. But I feel like we've both kind of changed almost every 5 years. So definitely there's I would say my growth periods and how I've evolved over time. There's definitely like an adjustment that you almost have to make with each other. And these times that you do that, you're almost kind of like rediscovering someone.
Right.
So every time she's kind of like changed through the nature of what she's done, and she's extremely successful doing what she's doing. She's currently a teacher. And like for me, I feel like I'm on that growth pattern, and like my level of success, maybe I hold myself a little bit, or maybe I judge a little bit too hard, but I feel like I've accomplished quite a bit for what I've done so far. So it's a partnership. It's a journey. And you really just have to, I think that every 5 years, it's almost like it's not you're reconnecting, but you just have to adapt to the new situation. And so it's super cool, honestly.
I don't think you finished the story about the gondola. So you got to the top. You survived. Obviously, you survived it.
Yeah, so kind of. So I survived it, sure. And I get to the top, and I had this entire speech. Sorry. So I have this entire speech. We get to the top, and I am now beyond nervous because now I'm equally scared of how am I going to get down, because it's late in the evening and I'm totally willing to walk down. Like at this point, I'm like, roll me over the edge. It's fine. No. And I get to the top, I get to this one section, and it's perfect. We're overlooking glaciers, and I drop to my knee and then bumble out words.
Right.
Everything I had planned completely went out the window.
Right.
I was beyond a wreck. So she understood what I was doing. Everyone else around us understood everything. So yeah, it was a crazy moment, I would say.
But you survived it.
Oh yeah, I'm here. So naturally.
Right. And how was the trip back down?
So I think one of relief. So it's as that ground keeps coming closer and closer, and the fact that I accomplished the mission, at that point I was like, okay, fantastic. Like, we just need to like touch soil, and then after we touch soil, everything from there is going to be absolutely incredible. So that's basically what
huge relief.
Oh, huge relief. And she said yes, so
right.
I was lucky. And then I guess over time we never got married. We just kind of made that decision of like, the title necessarily doesn't matter, we're in this.
Right.
So I think at some point we might do it, and we might just have like a huge party and just invite everybody. But I don't know. I can't tell you that there's anything in me, or if the moment she's like, okay, let's do this now. Fantastic. I would go for it. So.
Well, it's a wonderful story. So you met it in Vernon. Is that where you're from?
So no. So originally I was born in Vancouver, BC Children's Hospital in Burnaby, and then. Most of my family actually lived kind of within a block radius of like Main Street. So I grew up East 55th in Maine. We kind of moved all over the place. So I ended up in Creston at one time. I ended up in Salmon Arm. I've lived in Surrey for a brief period of time. I've lived in Kamloops for a brief period of time. And so I think like I went to high school in Salmon Arm, and I graduated in Salmon Arm at SAS, and then ended up in Vernon, and then with Vernon, me and Chantel met, and I was actually a waiter at Pizza Hut at the time, and she was a newly hired waitress. So that's how I was supposed to train her. Apparently I did too good of a job. And then, and then we moved from there to Kelowna. So in 2007, and it was purely so that she could go to school, because she knew that she wanted to be a teacher, and I knew that I just didn't want to go to school.
Right.
So it made for an easy decision. And so I went and I worked a couple sales jobs and did that. And she worked as a bartender, and
Right. So that was 2007.
That's 2007. Yeah.
She graduated, but you never left. You never left the city. You both liked it.
Absolutely. So I would say, like, maybe we moved a little bit earlier than 2007, but I would say that we did move during, actually, I think 2009. We actually left and went, and that was during a recession. It was the housing crisis, essentially, that we had, and that's the last one. And so how we were affected is rent started being sky high, because 2007, 2008, not unlike right now, moved the rents to such a degree that it was just almost unaffordable for us. And so we actually moved in with her mom. And so...
Was that here?
No, so that was actually in Vernon.
Okay.
So we did that for a year, and then we decided, you know what, we need to move back. Staying with her mom was actually incredible. It was a fun time for me too. So,
right.
Yeah. It's nice to have meals.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. That was a huge benefit.
Yeah.
I would have stayed forever, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
cheap rent,
home cooked meals and cheap rent. Yeah. I mean that, when people are facing financial anxiety, to have a mom to cook for you, it's like it's incredible. It takes a lot of stress.
What a massive advantage. So that helped us so much. And then we moved back. I ended up working at Visions for a very short period
of time. The electronics.
Yeah, Visions Electronics. Yeah. So I've worked Future Shop, Visions, all sorts of different places. And so ended up working there, and I don't know. I was starting a management road there, and just thinking, you know what, I kind of want to do something more, but I want to take some skills and learn them. And so what happened is I just decided, you know what, I'm going to take an interview, and figured out that with the person I interviewed with, instead of actually being the employee, I was like, you know what, why can't I just be the boss?
Right.
And so it was kind of almost an arrogant play, I think at the time. And I was like, you know what, I think I can do this. And so I went out and I created a business. It was called Cellworks, and we did cell phone repair. And it was a very exciting time, very challenging. I would say that the first 3 years, I didn't make any money doing it. In fact, I feel like I gave away a lot of money.
Right.
My employees were absolutely incredible. Everybody was more than in it. I had kind of two business partners throughout the process, and even as such, it was such a learning experience that it allowed me to have almost a groundwork from which to build from, because I learned a lot of mistakes.
Right.
I learned not necessarily what not to do, but maybe what I should learn more of.
Right. So what sort of things were you learning? Was it how to deal with people, how to hire people and fire people, finances, dealing with the math of the business? Like what sorts of things?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the I Love Kelowna podcast. Be sure to visit the website at ilovekelowna.buzzsprout.com. Now, your host, Luke J. Minkus.
So I think the understanding principles of, because business is so vague. When you say like, hey, like I'm in business or I'm an entrepreneur. Okay, that's great.
Right.
What does that even mean? There are many different ways to accentuate and kind of understand what those things kind of become. And so for me, I think I started understanding that the leadership component of it was something I was really good at. So I started understanding that I can actually motivate employees and do it in such a way that it would be, I'd almost be a relatable figure to them. I'm not saying I'm like necessarily like the best friend, but I would say that we would kind of go through this journey together. And then we would find a common goal, or I'd find a common goal that we can kind of play off of. And then that allows for a purpose. And if somebody has a purpose, it's just, it's so nice. If we're all fighting for the same thing, or for the hopefully the same result, then we're all taking the same wins and we're all taking the same losses.
Right.
I learned very early that accountability is a massive key to leadership. And it's because I made so many mistakes in accountability that it allowed me to understand that, you know what, this is sometimes the wins need to be someone else's wins. And like the losses always have to be mine.
Right.
And so it was understanding that process and understanding like what I could provide in that instance really helped someone feel safe.
Yes.
And like they were going to be taken care of. So it was an absolutely massive lesson.
Yeah.
Definitely throughout that time.
When I think back on all the people I've worked for and the ones who were willing to take accountability and that I could talk to, they would hold me accountable, but they would also be willing to teach me and answer questions and set a good example themselves. Like I've worked for people who just didn't want to work. Like they were lazy and then they would be upset if I didn't do what I was supposed to do. Right. And so that to me, I can totally relate to that. Like when I think like my current situation, actually, the person who runs the company that I work for is a great guy, works hard, and he doesn't brag about stuff that he's going to do and never does. He takes accountability and it's a very respectful, situation.
And what you just touched on too is something where this also kind of gets lost in the business ecosphere. It's like you can go to school, you can have a lot of great ideas, you can attempt to implement them, but unless you kind of go all in and actually go through the execution stage of it, like I mentor a lot of like young business professionals that are kind of coming up in the world. And then these business professionals, the cool thing with it is they're all at kind of different stages of where they are. And so some are extremely successful. Some are figuring out distribution. Some are going through like through their lens, their problems. But I look at it and I go, you know what? This is kind of first world problems here. Like you're still making margins here. Or then you have another individual who like is struggling to find clients, but has like the perfect product.
Right.
And so it's how do you market that product out? And in this case, it's a service. And so it's one of those interesting components of you watch both parties, even though they're at different stages of their career, go through the same level of self-doubt. And you watch them. And one of the things that makes the difference 100% is the execution. So coming up with a million different ideas, that's great. But if you can actually execute on one of those ideas and kind of take it to the very end, amazing.
Right.
Yeah. Whether it fails or like wins or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Was it 2017 or 2018 when you first started to get into mortgages and the real estate business, or how did that come about?
Oh, I've been so very lucky. So essentially in, I think, 2017, I was kind of debating it, but I had a good mentor. And so this mentor actually was my mortgage broker. And she wasn't a mentor then, but what she did was we would sit in her office, me and my wife, and we would be so far away from purchasing a place. And instead of just being like, okay, get out, she was like, okay, no, sit down. Let's go over it. Let's run credits, figure this out. This is how we would game it. And this is how we would do it. And I'm like, okay, fantastic. So we walked away with a strategy and a plan. Now, at the time, I would say that I was almost dejected. Like at that point, I was like, oh, like I don't think we're ever going to do this. But my wife, being my wife, was like, oh yeah, like we're going to make this happen.
Right.
And so just leaving it in her hands was more than enough for the both of us on that one. And I was like, oh, so thankful. And so I understand, like, especially when I talk to like current clients and first time home buyers, oh, I know that feeling all too well. And so I want to say over the course of almost 6 years, every time she would stay in contact, and she did a great job of staying in contact. And we would reach out to her and be like, okay, what's our situation like now? She was just like, you know what? Maybe you should try this. Right. I was like, oh,
like what sort of things? Like
I don't know what she picked up on, but I think she liked the way maybe I talk, or I don't know what she was after.
Oh, like try this business.
Try the mortgage broker business. Wow. And so I was like, you know what? Like, I don't know. And at first I was like, no, there's no way.
Right.
You know what? That real estate game, that's for other people. That's not me. And then I just over time, it's almost like I was working a corporate job, and it just didn't give me the satisfaction. And my son was, so my son is 9 now. And so after he was born, I knew that I wanted to spend more time with him. And so I was like, well, like me being away from like 9 to 5, and then I have to prepare an hour in advance on both sides. And so like I would see him a little bit in the morning and see him a little bit at night, but really like his bedtime would be 7. So I'd be like, well, this is not much of a life.
Right.
So I came to the conclusion of like, okay, I need to change something here and take a risk. So my lovely wife said, sure, let's do it. You can go ahead and try. And so I did, and I put everything I possibly could into it. So that, I passed my course January of 2019.
Okay.
So I would be year 5 in, and I've been lucky enough to be in different magazines, speak for CBC. I've gone on company trips to Hawaii, which was an incredible trip. I'll be honest with you. Like, I think the year that I went to Hawaii, I must have cost the company more,
right,
than they made off me. I almost promise it. It's actually hilarious to me. So like, and that's just how much that company 100% valued its people. So huge props to Tango on that one. So yeah, no, I went through a period where there's definitely a period where I was learning, and I kept that same mentor throughout the process. And then I changed, I almost kind of changed up my thinking and my verbiage and just went all in. I learned as much as I could in a very short period of time. And I think there was, originally I did it for extra time with my son, but I found that the more I put in, the more I was going to get out. And so if I led with empathy with clients, if I led with more of a transparent, completely upfront approach with realtors, and realtor partners and referral partners and those individuals, and then if I just led from a point of almost kindness, and showing that and keeping and almost trying to find value for somebody else and trying to provide that for them. It's worked wonders for me. It's helped me in spades,
right,
that I can't even describe. So
I can think of a few things from your mentor that I think are really important if someone's going to choose any sort of career. One was she was very empathetic with you and patient with you. I know some professionals in sales or real estate or mortgages can be like, I really don't have time to deal with you because you're not qualified to make this purchase, rather than educating the client. She was very patient with you and apparently taught you a lot. So I'm sure that influenced your career, like you emulated that. And the other thing was, you mentioned once you decided to do it, you poured all your energy into it. And that is huge. Like, if you want to be good at something, you really got to commit to it. You have to get into it and enjoy the learning and the process and learning everything you can, right?
Yeah, that roller coaster of those first 2 years, I would say, was just a roller coaster of emotions. It had nothing to do with like a success meter at all of any kind. It was just, I constantly felt like I was failing most of the time, but then I had these guiding principles that I wanted to stand by the entire time. And so I knew that if I was going to find my path and carve out my niche in this, that I was going to do it my way.
Right.
And I wasn't going to look at how everyone else was accomplishing success. I was going to look at how I could make that, and how I could do it without giving up any piece of me. I didn't want to pretend to be anything else. I wanted to just be me throughout the entire process.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I think a lot of soul searching, I think I felt in the beginning like it held me back, but more so it probably helped me more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think being your authentic self is so hard
Yeah.
and to guide your principle by, but once you do it, you make a vast decision
Yeah.
to allow for success to happen with the right people, the right clients, the right referral partners. Everything comes together.
Right. Well, I'd like to ask you a little bit about that. We touched on it a couple of weeks ago when we met. And I can say to anyone listening, like, this is obviously a great formula for success, because after spending about an hour with you, I decided this is the person I want to go to if I need advice on a mortgage situation or I have a client that needs a mortgage. I concluded that, and I have my reasons, but I'd like to explore that a little bit about what are some of the things that you, as you were learning, you decided to do differently than the norm, or that I don't think you were really even comparing yourself to other people at a certain point. You were kind of like, this is me. I want to enhance my good qualities, and this is the type of business person I want to be. I want to talk a little bit about that. So one of the things you told me that was amazing was your schedule and how you reworked that so you could get a lot of time with your son, quality time with your son.
So schedule wise, I think I've tried a lot of different things. So
Right.
I've had 15-minute blocks that I had to do at one time. Somehow I ended up in a state where I was running like 5 different like startup companies at one time.
Wow.
I had a marketing company at one time that like was actually like decently successful, that January of this year, I was like, you know what? I need to go all in on this mortgage thing. And we'll talk about Insight Mortgage later, but that piece of scheduling has been such a struggle and such a difficult thing, because if you put yourself in a lot of different situations, running those levers and trying to figure out where your time comes in, one of the easiest things to sacrifice, and this sounds absolutely awful, but it seems like it's always family. And so that family lever, I always have to watch constantly, because that's the one that it almost instantly gets taken away from.
Right.
So in doing so, how I schedule things now is I try to automate as much of my process as possible, or like I have an incredible underwriter now who's, like I had one before that was good, absolutely great. And she was starting and making it through the business, and like within a short period of time, she became extremely good. But the one that I have right now has like over 25 years, almost 30 years of experience. And she's worked for lenders. And so she sees things through a different lens than even I do or the client can, which allows for so much time to be freed. So yes, it's one of those things where you maybe pay handsomely for these things, but it's worth it because of what it gives you and what it gives back. It gives back to the client. It gives back to the referral partners. It gives back to my family. So freeing up that time is absolutely massive. So when you have 2 people working on a file versus just one, it's so much easier, and you can throw ideas at and you get there so much faster. I think the answer that what I was referring to when we spoke for coffee, and for the record, it wasn't an hour. That was like almost 2.5 hours.
That's true.
Yeah.
It was an hour when it was just the 2 of us, I think. So the first 90 minutes, we had another person.
Yeah.
But
I'm not calling you out. I'm just saying, I was like, that was a long meeting.
Yeah.
No, and I enjoyed it.
But I think the last hour was where I was asking more personal, direct questions. We were kind of just talking about real estate in general and touching on parts of your life. Yeah. But I felt like our deeper conversation was the last hour. But yeah, it was like 2.5 hours.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so kind of how I like do things now, and it seems insane, but I just I have a short calendar, and I try to only create like 1 or 2 appointments in a day max, and those are just like usually like referral partners or that sort of thing. All of my clients I talk to immediately. And so I have this saying where I try not to lose a day. And so if I schedule an appointment with my client, or somebody that comes in and it's like 2 or 3 days in advance, well then it just becomes a nightmare. You're losing days, and when you lose days when something's live or for the other individual, you're just creating friction points that you don't need to. So just picking up the phone and not being afraid to just like call and kind of get things done right away. That's huge, and that's hugely helpful, and it's helpful for them. It's helpful for me, and it kind of allows us to go through. When I'm scheduling time, I try to make sure that every day I'm picking up my son. So what I do is I have some blocks that are completely laid out. So for instance, the morning, I wake up pretty early, roughly 4:35 in the morning. I don't necessarily advise it, but I do it. And my son also wakes up roughly around the same time.
Wow.
So we just sit and giggle and watch cartoons in the morning, and it's absolutely incredible. Like we'll watch Minecraft videos.
Right.
I've seen more Minecraft videos than I think I can even.
Are those the dudes that play it and then they're commenting with their streaming?
Yeah, 100%. And so it's that's on YouTube, and he just loves it, and we just sit there and we laugh and giggle at these things because it's all these made up stories that kind of come up from it. So it's fun. And then my son gets off school at 2:30, and so it's always been a non-negotiable for me that I am the one who picks him up. And so at 2:30, I'm there. Then what happens is we just go through our walk home, and through the walk home, we just giggle and have fun. And we make up jokes. Yeah. And I would say that in the beginning, when he was like 5 or 6, these weren't very sophisticated.
Right.
Now this man is much funnier than I am. So he's had a lot of years of practice. I apparently need to up my game.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's really wonderful. Yeah. I find if I get up early, my day is so much more productive. Because there's important things that we don't really feel are urgent things. Like you said, family, well, I can see him tomorrow. I'm really busy today. I'll talk to him tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes the next day, and so on and so on. When I'm up early, the phone's not ringing. Nobody's looking for me, right? I can do what's important during those hours without distraction.
And I think you have to kind of choose what's important. And so for me, I just chose, him and my wife as being the most important things in that moment. And that's kind of the time I can give to them. In my wife's case in the morning, it's letting her sleep. Right. It's probably the best thing I can kind of give to her at that moment. But usually after he's in bed, so like 7:30, 8 or whatever, and like that's our time. Like we get to hang out. And so we don't do enough dates. I'm probably definitely like there's a lot that I can do better for sure in this. And so it's one of those things where I need to be better. But in the current moment, it's a system that currently works. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us about your philosophy when it comes to mortgages and why you do the things the way you do. So you mentioned like you'll call people right away. If there's a new client, you want to figure out the situation and just be honest about their situation and have that conversation immediately.
So I think it kind of comes down to almost a better story about how I started and how I started to learn that I need to kind of do things my way. So when I first started as a mortgage broker, I studied everybody else. There were podcasts I could go on to. There were other people I would take out for coffee, other brokers, and I thought I was learning, and I was like, okay, great. And I was getting everything from within the lens. But one of the things from being an entrepreneur and basically having success and failures in business is I knew that the lens I needed was my clients and from the referral side of things. Like, where am I going to get my clients from?
Right.
And so I learned very early on that I needed to look outside the bubble and look in rather than just be in the bubble and be like, oh, things are fine.
Right.
I kept getting this, so I'm in my office and I kept getting this pamphlet from this realtor, and I was like, okay, no problem. And I get it once, and I'm in the office every single day, and because I'm taking everything super seriously and working my 10-hour days, and I get this pamphlet again like a week later, and I get it again a week later, and like I almost like had this arrogant text that I sent, and I remember it so well, where I was like, hey, well, you keep sending me pamphlets, so we might as well meet. I bet you she still has that. I bet you she still has that text. One day this is going to get used against me, so I might as well just come out with it. So we ended up going for coffee, and like I didn't do my due diligence and I didn't do research on her.
Mm-hmm.
I just assumed that who I was going to meet was somebody who was newer.
Right.
I didn't know what I was going to come up against. And so I met with this individual, and it was the first time, I think within the first like 2 minutes, this person mentioned that they had 2 assistants. And I was like, oh no, what have I done? Right. And so I'm like, so I came in here with ego and pride and arrogance. And I came in here with everything I shouldn't have.
Right.
And I remember her asking me, and like the exact words were basically, hey, like, obviously this isn't a Tinder date. So, so why am I here?
Mm-hmm. She said that to you. She's like, what am I doing? She
was very direct.
Right.
And so I was like, oh no.
Right.
And so I end up in the situation where I'm like, okay, think. Like I was like Winnie the Pooh, like think Ash, think Ash. And so we came to in an instant, I came to this one conclusion. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, well, obviously, I brought you here. So I just wanted to know, what is it you dislike about mortgage brokers?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a great question.
Oh, that's an incredible question. I didn't, it got me out of it immediately. And so I was like, oh, thank you. And so what happened is that blossomed a relationship that I didn't expect to happen.
Yeah.
And she explained over the course of probably like a good half hour, like, this is how I would do things. This is whatever. And like the moment I dropped the ego
mm-hmm.
and the arrogance, and I started acting more like my authentic self,
mm-hmm.
like more of the curious wanderer, less of the person who's trying to assert dominance of any kind,
or be the expert all the time.
I would be the most unlikely expert. It would have taken 10 seconds to suss me out at that time. So I had no business pretending like I knew anything. And so she was so kind and gracious and just gave me like little tidbits and everything. Mm-hmm. And so we part ways. And I remember I went into my truck at the time and I furiously wrote down everything she said.
Wow.
And then I started taking that exact same thing and I would take other realtors out. And the first question I would ask them, what do you hate about brokers?
Right.
And then they would talk for like an hour straight. And I'd be like, wow, like,
there's
a lot of things you don't like. And so it was actually super interesting. So it allowed me to kind of reverse engineer my path. And I started going, okay, well, I like to be a guy who provides value. Mm-hmm. And I understand that this is a very serious game, especially when you're like, we have liabilities. We're under professional liability. Like we have to make sure that we do things right. So we can't necessarily do things through the bare minimum. Mm-hmm. And so what I decided was I wasn't going to do that. And I just wrote everything down. I almost put it all together, and I still have the notepad that I put it all together in. And it was great. It allowed me to make decisions with better clarity looking from the outside in than any other time. So that right there probably changed the direction of my career in an instant.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that story. And you still work together to this day.
Oh, to this day. Absolutely. And like, it's a dream. Like we've had plenty of clients that have come to both of us being like, how are you two like not like having your own businesses together or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they can't understand that like we're actually two separate human beings.
Right.
Yeah. It feels like a team. And so that team environment is something that I've had with other realtors as well. And since then, and it's really like, it's kind of where the magic is. Mm-hmm. When you can look into it and you can bring the client in behind the scenes and you can take the realtor in with you, and you have the mortgage broker and you have the lawyer and you have the appraiser and everybody kind of involved, and everybody understands that we all have the same goal.
Yeah.
And so if we can see it like it's a team game, it changes.
Yeah.
It changes the dynamic immediately.
Yeah.
Now for that client and for that realtor and for everybody, it's like we're all together.
Yeah. That communication is so crucial. And I can remember many times going into meetings like that. I'm like, they're going to think I'm stupid. So I got to pretend that like more knowledgeable than I necessarily am. And I really started to progress when I just started to ask questions, like you said, the curious wanderer, right? So I want to ask you the same question. What is it that you hate about real estate agents? And maybe that's not the way you would phrase it today.
No, and that's not, but that's a good question. So truly, and this is something that drives me absolutely nuts. And anybody that does this needs to take this to heart. Mm-hmm. I can not smell, but I can hear a realtor voice in a second. So your clients can too.
Yeah.
Everybody can.
Like Ronnie Salesman, like
if it just sounds like this is like a new voice that you use just for this topic, just to sound professional or just to sound whatever, I get it. And I understand why. But, having that little bit of relatability, everyone's human.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes. We all have flaws. If my clients can be vulnerable with me, why can't I be vulnerable with them?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm asking them to give up their financials, like one of the most personal pieces of their lives. And normally they keep these secret from everyone.
Right.
They don't want their parents to see it. They don't want their neighbors to see it, their best friends to see it.
Right.
But I get to see it.
Yeah.
So if they're vulnerable, I should be as well. If from a realtor standpoint, I think it's the same subject. And a lot of people do this well. And I think maybe it's a small subsection, but it's an interesting thing. And you know what? If I get flamed or roasted for it, whatever, I'll die by it. No problem.
Yeah. So you, I think you told me you kind of limit, like you're not trying to deal with every single real estate agent in the Okanagan. You have a core that you love to work with, and it's really efficient because you understand each other, and they're ethical people, and they're really great to work with. Like
the secrets,
the person you just described. So just to expand on that last question a little bit, like what is it that you find attractive in a real estate agent, and what is it that you find annoying, and that you're like, maybe this person's not going to be a good fit for me as a mortgage broker?
It really honestly comes down to the vulnerability, the ego, the pride, understanding that if we drop that component of it and work together, it creates a better experience for everyone around us.
Yeah.
And treating it truly like a team and understanding what that even means.
Yeah.
It's for some, it's tough. And I get that. And life sends us in many different directions, and we get to experience many different things. And so from my lens, I would way rather work with somebody again and again and again if I know that experience is going to be an A+ experience. And even if something feels like it's falling apart just a little bit, that we can work together to figure it out. I have such good relationships with some realtors that will literally be like, hey, Ash, this whole thing collapsed, but then I solved it last second. Just so you know, I just wanted you to know that this was the situation. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, great. Like you didn't even have to tell me. I never would have known. But it's good to know that you have a pulse on it. And this is what's happened. And I almost feel guilty that I didn't even know.
Right.
So it's those things. There's plenty of times when, like, I've been in a situation where there's maybe something going on that just doesn't sit quite right with the listing or with whatever. And I'm like brought in like the realtor with another lawyer, and we've kind of just all kind of discussed it together and been like, okay, like, how do we advise the client?
Right.
How do we actually do this in such a way that we are helping and not hindering?
Right.
And so it's about really treating it like it's a teamwork environment. And so, and this is one of those things where it's like, you're not going to get along with everybody.
You're right.
It just naturally isn't going to happen. And so, I'd like to think I'm likable, but there's plenty of people out there, I'm sure, that are like, ooh, like Ash, I wouldn't use him.
Well, it's different styles too, right? It's
totally.
Personality types and
if you want the super professional mortgage broker that is just going to just get it done and doesn't want to joke around, I'm probably not your guy.
Right.
I'd rather understand that yes, there is a very serious notion to what we do, but it doesn't have to be stressful.
Right.
It can be fun.
Yes.
Like, it's amazing when it is fun.
Yeah.
And so it's just that category of it.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, buying a home is one of the most stressful things people go through, but it's also one of the most exciting things people do, especially if it goes well and smoothly. And people have a lot of anxiety around it, which is completely understandable. Sometimes I forget that. Like, if you do a ton of deals and people are the same as we are, they don't want to come across as unknowledgeable or stupid. So they kind of will sugarcoat things, and they're maybe suffering from a ton of anxiety.
Oh,
And what are some of the things like we could tell the public that like you've learned, I've learned, that they don't really understand about the real estate process and what an agent does and what a mortgage broker does and what the bank does, and what are some of the things you've learned? Like people are like, wow, I never knew that before. Like in your first conversation with that agent, you were taking notes as soon as you got to your truck, and you learned so much by asking questions. Like, what are some of the things that would surprise a lot of people if they knew?
Well, there's a lot of technical things that are maybe like gray areas that a lot of people don't understand. So, for instance, let's say you have a commitment that you get sent from the bank. You've signed the commitment. Everything looks like it's all good. There's plenty of realtors that I've had to educate, and plenty of individuals I've had to educate that whole commitment that's there is a commitment, but that lender can actually pull out. So at the 11th hour, they can run your credit, find out, oh, you just bought 2 trucks. Okay, well, this no longer fits. So it seems like a basic, but it actually happened to me. So 100%, I had a client who, luckily he was a very wealthy individual and was able to pull this off, but he literally bought a truck the day after we signed.
You got the approval.
Yeah. Literally the day after. And I was like, what are you doing? And he went and he actually drove to my house to show me the truck that he purchased. And I was like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. So it can change. Even if you get a final approval, it's still subject to you behaving until you get to the completion.
Yeah, you actually want to behave all the way up to 30 days after. I
Right?
would say, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
What could happen if you bought a truck you couldn't really afford like a week after you closed on it?
So I've never seen it before, but there was a horror story I read that happened in the East where a lender actually pulled out after the signing because the whole loan process changed essentially. And so I don't know if that would actually I don't know if I'd actually ever see that occur, but it's just an interesting thing that I now tell people. Just, you know what, for that first, like until you sign up the lawyers, and then maybe just wait 30 days after that. Yeah. Let all the money clear. Let everybody just intake everything. Just give it time. And then from there, then make your decision. So that's a good one. I think another one that's would shock a lot of individuals is that when you take a home equity line of credit, those aren't it's the equivalent of a mortgage as it's a charge on title, but that charge on title could get called at any time. And most individuals do not know that. Right. It's an interesting thing. So if you got $150,000 on a line of credit, I'm not saying it would happen, right? But there are stories where it does.
Yeah. And rates can change.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
so you might qualify last year, but now they're like, this is too expensive for you.
Look at how much the change in the last couple of years, Luke. It's amazing. I think there was definitely an expectation that rates wouldn't stay the same, but I don't think I've had to go on CBC radio a couple times for this. The expectation versus the reality of what happened were two totally different things. Yeah. And then, so not to get technical, but at that time there was a gentleman who's still the head of the Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklem, during, I think 2021 basically said, hey, don't worry. We won't even up rates by a percentage. Don't worry, you're good. Right. Rates are going to stay this low for a long time.
So they took a variable mortgage? Is that?
No. Tiff is the head of the Bank of Canada. Oh, I see. So, no. So what happened is Tiff said, okay, rates are going to stay the same. And he's him and his board, are in charge of, the Bank of Canada overnight rate. And so what happened is that rate just started jumping and jumping and jumping. And so it's like, if from a government standpoint, if you tell the public one thing, then it makes them feel safe. And then suddenly when that whole thing changes, well, then what did that do? That created a lot of turmoil. Yes. Created a lot of animosity. A lot of people are on the edge. A lot of investors have to get rid of their homes. It upped rent. It did what that change in interest rate did to our society is absolutely incredible. It basically created an affordability crisis. And with housing not dropping, only staying stable, it still makes it so interesting. Like it's actually a very hard road if you're a first time home buyer today.
Do you think it was people's expectations that were dashed? That really, like, what do you think the reason is that they said this? Is it their inability to predict the future, or was it a political thing? They were kind of sugarcoating the inflationary situation so that, Trudeau could get reelected, or what? How did that happen?
To be perfectly honest, I'm an overly hopeful individual. So maybe more so than needed. And so I would never look at it from a lens of possible nefarious means or from a political strategy component. I would, however, look at it from maybe the facts given at the time. I believe that people are making the best decision with what they have at the time.
Right.
But I also believe that in that instance, when you print that much money, you have something called an M2 money supply. When that creeps up, you just have so much money in the market that it just automatically, and you have a global supply shortage.
Right.
Inflation is going to happen.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, I think housing maybe shouldn't have been as low as it was at the time in terms of rates. So I think that when that adjustment started happening, instead of keeping it low, they should have just started quarter pointing up rather than making it a full point or a half point and just basically shocking the market.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think you're contrarian like me in the sense that we're trying to see what the trend is. There's a great philosopher, but he's actually an economist. His name is Robert Prechter. And he, there was a writer back in the 1920s and 30s called Eliot, and he came up with the Elliott wave concept. And the theory is that humans tend to, we can get pretty good at projecting trends. Like we see a trend, we observe a trend, and we can project it forward. But interest rates in the economy and prices don't really go in a straight line. They go in a wave pattern. They go up, they go down. And crashes happen when the last guy has put his last nickel in, because we always have sellers, but we don't always have buyers. And so he made the comment, like, if you're in Vegas and you're going there to play, slot machines or blackjack, and your cab driver is talking about his real estate portfolio, it's not an insult on him, but it means that everybody has put all the money they have into real estate. It can only go one direction, which is down. And it's just a kind of a cruel thing about human nature. When everybody is super overconfident, there's no more buyers left because everybody's already bought. And that's the time you should be looking at reducing debt and scaling back. And even classical trained economists have this tendency. Things are great. There's no reason they won't be great tomorrow because they've been great for 3 years. So tomorrow should be exactly the same.
So, and I actually kind of agree with this because I have a little bit of a philosophy where I always try to play almost the opposite of markets.
Right.
So where interest rates are high, there's an affordability crisis for sure, and it's hard to purchase. But if you have the ability to purchase, a lot of those people put everything on the sideline.
Yes.
Where I don't.
Right.
So I look at it as this is my time to purchase. And so putting my money where my mouth is, I purchased a full duplex in Rutland that closed on July 3rd. And so it's one of those things where it's like, if I see bidding wars happen, maybe that's not the best time.
That's right.
But if I have an opportunity to kind of navigate and kind of actually choose, then maybe the decision I'm going to make is not going to be an emotional one. It'll be more of a strategic one that I can play with. I think it works the same in any market. So if it's vehicles, and vehicles are suddenly there's a shortage, and you just know that everyone is like going as you got a year before you're going to get your next vehicle, but you order it today. I kind of see how that would create almost a trend for somebody where they're like, oh, I better get this now.
Right.
Or else I'll miss out. Right. And so that fear of missing out can kind of kick in. But I look at it more so like, if that's what's happening, maybe I should just hold off. Think about buying a used vehicle or think about buying something for now. So it's an interesting way to view a market, and it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
So buyer beware. Don't make investment decisions based on me. But it's worked out well for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm basically a product of really good mentorship. And so that is something that was taught to me. That's not something I came up with.
It's really hard for even very, very intelligent people with a lot of experience to take the emotion out of a situation in a financial market. And I agree with you. There is a lot of opportunity right now. We don't know what the future holds, but when people are a little bit nervous and, thinking about downsizing and trying to get rid of real estate, there's opportunities to buy if you're positioned to do so.
Where we are in the Okanagan, and so we're such in an advantageous situation. The historical average on the math that I did. So anyone out there, if they want to actually do better math than I did, you know what, have at her. But I came up with, if you include all the way to 1979 and 1980, and you remove all the years that were the tumultuous COVID years where everything basically doubled, I came up with a number of 3.8% as a historical average year over year is what the equity increase has been. So that is a massive number since that time. And so if you know that there's a possibility or a very high chance that if you purchase a home that you will get a 3.8% equity increase on it, that's amazing, because most people don't understand the compounding effect that could have. So I did this math earlier today, and it's kind of scary math. And so if it is accurate, we did a home that was, I think, 400,000. It might have been 350 or 400,000. This is what I did literally earlier today. And then we put that 3.8% in, compounded it over 10 years, and that number became 500,000. And so then if that equity increase over 10 years is 100,000, that's not bad.
Right.
That means you're probably making money. Now, here's where don't follow my investment advice. There might be a period of time when supply catches up. It doesn't look like it right now.
Doesn't seem like it.
Municipalities would have to change, and there'd have to be a lot of federal programs and a lot more streamlining of development permits to even make that occur.
Yep.
But let's assume that all of those things happen. The perfect storm happens. Suddenly there's an excess supply of housing. Well, then that increase is not going to exist. So I would say that at the current moment, I think there's a huge opportunity, and I think taking advantage of that opportunity would be very useful.
Right.
I think for an individual that's trying to build a future, and if they can make it happen, that would be how you would do it. So
and you're going to guide them to make sure they have enough down payment, that they're not paying too much, that they're going to qualify for this. But the qualification process is really a check on, I noticed myself, and a lot of people get a little bit shocked when they see a decline. They're like, well, I thought I could afford this, but the people underwriting it don't think so.
I have a wonderful story where it took me 2.5 years with one client that I've never seen people try so hard. It was very similar to mine, where the husband in this situation was just whatever, almost felt dejected and almost felt like I did when we went and we created the strategy and created the plan. But the wife was like, no, we're going to make this happen.
Right.
And then we got closer, and then he started seeing hope, and he's like, okay, he's on board. And then suddenly it's like a year and a half. We must have had, I think, 7 declines.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So we would go through one, and then the first one hit hard, and then the third one still hit hard, and the fifth one still hit hard. By the time you got to the 7th one, they were like, whatever. It really kind of came down to it was almost like the game kept changing for them. And every time we submitted it, we thought we had fixed all of the issues that we were supposed to fix. And then we'd find a new, it's almost like an escape room. We'd get out of the escape room and be like, okay, great, we got everything. And then we hit the next stage, and it's like, hold on, why are we in another escape room? And so we constantly failed this escape room. And at first, I think I remember the 3rd or 4th one, I had another broker look at everything. I was like, look, am I just bad? Is this what's happening right now? And so should I just be hanging up my skates at this moment? No, it was wild different things that occurred. And it just so happened that the first lender that we went to originally ended up being the seventh lender that allowed them to get the place.
Wow.
And it just, when that happened, the tears.
How much time went by from the first to the seventh?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Was it a case of should they have tried to buy something less expensive or what?
No. So in this moment, it was kind of a bankruptcy situation with some debt payouts, and it was a very different. Some rules had changed. Some rules had changed to complicate things that happened in the meantime. So it was almost like as they get closer and as like you get over the old threshold that's required, but suddenly the threshold is moved over a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're like, no.
Yeah.
How is this possible?
Right.
So it became disheartening, I think, on everyone, but it was a team game. It was the same realtor. It was the same mortgage broker, me. It was the same clients. We used the same realtor. Like we created a team environment out of it that actually made it, believe it or not, it was actually like a joyful experience at the end. And it was like going through the process. Yeah, there were some disheartening moments, definitely. And it affected me 100% because I tend to somehow get emotionally involved in like the client aspect. If I'm purchasing something for me, there's zero emotion. I'm like ready to go to war almost. And then, but if it's a client, I get emotionally involved. And I know that it's bad, but I just do it every time. And so I kind of feel their pain a little bit, even though I shouldn't.
Right.
And I think it's my empathy. I almost go too far over to one edge. So when the decline happens, I'm like, it feels like I just got declined.
Right.
So it's like declines do happen. But other things that I've learned over time is to kind of underpromise and overdeliver. And sometimes at that time of being a broker, I kind of was like, I could have changed my process to be better for that. So I could have prepared them way better for what was going to occur.
Right.
But I, at that time, was so hopeful that these would just continually go through.
Right.
And then I learned over time that maybe I should start strategizing this one a little bit better. And so it's kind of how I've evolved over time. I've learned to be a better broker, and I think it's one of those things where over periods of time, you kind of need to be. And I know I'm talking in a rant here, but there was one broker I remember talking to, and I explained it like every 6 months. It's like I would look back at the guy that was there 6 months ago and be like, "Whoa, that guy knew nothing."
Right.
Like, and it's strange. So I'm in year 5, like heading into year 6, and I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
I feel like I look back 6 months ago and be like, "Wow, that guy was
not
clueless."
He had a lot to learn still. Yeah. And I think what you said a while ago about just being human, being vulnerable, being empathetic, to me, that's really the key to repeat business and referral business. It's not so much like they had a nice time, but they trust you. They know that you're doing everything you can and that you understand their situation top to bottom. They wouldn't even think of calling somebody else the next time. So
you couldn't be more right. The general consensus is, I would say, on my business, when I really look into the numbers and I look at everything, and it's honestly, it's from having businesses prior. You're trying to almost create a fan base. Like, you want people to absolutely rave about you.
Right.
You really do. And so the bulk majority do just that. And it's just led to more clients and more clients and more clients. And it actually has made it so that, like, advertising I've had to do very little of, because my business has naturally grown from that point of view. And then it's nice because it's like I've had realtors reach out and be like, "Hey, we really want to work with you." And me be like, "Okay, well, let's see what we can work together on." But it's having that capacity and having that understanding of, like, maybe this isn't the right fit, because and as much as you can provide me an excess amount, and we can ride off into the sunset together, sure. This isn't about getting rich. This is about helping people and maybe taking that sacrifice today to allow for that system and process and underlying principle of just being empathetic towards everyone and actually understanding and doing just a great job.
Yeah.
That's more important.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. Makes it worth getting up and the time with your son is probably way less stressful when you know you're doing that kind of job for your people. You're not worried about, geez, what's going to happen at 9 o'clock when that person calls me. Like, I mean, I was like that when I was younger. You know, I was always like trying to put out fires and avoid situations, and just being able to deal with people on that level has made my life so much better, my time with my kids so much better, and business more productive.
I used to get so nervous delivering bad news,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't anymore. It's a strange thing because it's almost like I've learned to just confront it and be upfront with absolutely everything.
Yeah.
I don't hide anything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm totally okay with like looking at someone's finances, seeing that they're like $100,000 in debt or even $5,000 in debt. And then they're like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I'll be like, listen, like at one time I was like 21 with $180,000 in debt. You have nothing. Yeah. Like your path or your road here, I know is like very serious to you, but you can do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think providing that hope, and then like I would say that there's a leadership component to it too. So it's almost providing that leadership to your clients as well as your staff and as well as the referral partners and everybody around you, and just making sure that everyone understands that it's a team game. That we're all humans, we're all fallible. Like we can all make mistakes. So we just roll with the punches.
Yeah,
and we just play as we do.
Very cool. We've spent over an hour already. Can you tell us briefly about your new company, and if you would like people to get in touch with you, how they could do so?
Okay, so I have just created a new brokerage. This is me being independent and going on my own. I've hired a underwriter who is, as I mentioned earlier, absolutely an incredible amount of experience, which is hugely helpful for me and for all the realtor partners and for all the clients that are going to be in place. I'm looking to hire new agents that are wanting to come on and learn a more vulnerable, I think, method, and I don't want to say wholesome as a word, but a method of brokering where they can be their authentic selves and they can still find success within their way.
Nice. So
it's called Insight Mortgage, insightfinance.ca. So INSIGHT finance.ca. And for me, you can reach me at 250-859-2100. I love that number. And you can also reach me at ash@insightfinance.ca.
Okay. We'll put that in the show notes. So
beautiful.
If people are driving, we don't want you to, try to write that down right this second, but it will be in the show notes.
I don't want to pay those medical bills.
No, no. Anyways, Ash, it's been great talking to you. I said last week or the week before, whenever that was, that I could talk to you for hours, and I feel it's productive and very beneficial for me to pick your brain. And I've really enjoyed getting to know you for the last 3.5 hours.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Luke.
Cheers.
I appreciate this.
You've been listening to I Love Kelowna. We love where we live, and how can you not? With all the provincial parks, pine forests, vineyards, orchards, mountains. On each show, we have in-depth, intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, execs, thought leaders, and creatives, all that make up Kelowna. You can support the show so we can keep producing by going to paypal.me/Luke Menkes. And make sure to visit the official website at ilovekelowna.buzzsprout.com. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. And we hope you had some fun along the way. We'll be back soon. Until then, this is I Love Kelowna signing off. You've been listening to I Love Kelowna. We love where we live, and how can you not? With all the provincial parks, pine forests, vineyards, orchards, mountains. On each show, we have in-depth, intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, execs, thought leaders, and creatives, all that make up Kelowna. You can support the show so we can keep producing by going to paypal.me/Luke Menkes. And make sure to visit the official website at ilovekelowna.buzzsprout.com. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show, and we hope you had some fun along the way. We'll be back soon. Until then, this is I Love Kelowna signing off.